I've had pretty much every birthing experience other than a C-section, and I just want to see how this feels. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like it's not going to take that long. So it kind of started out as like a personal challenge, but as I got deeper into the birth world, my eyes were really opened to the benefits of natural labor and delivery, like for the mom, for the baby. And it became so much more than just, can I do this?
Hi, I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 5 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God centered birth stories, evidence based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hey everyone, hope your week is off to a wonderful start. It's finally summer here, I think. This has probably been the longest spring we've ever had since I've lived in North Carolina, but it's been lovely. Usually you have 2 weeks of spring and then suddenly it's 90 degrees and super hot. But it has been so nice. It's been rainy, but it has been cool. So I've really appreciated that. But I think summer's finally here. I think my kids are finally ready to go to the pool and really get summer started. Okay, I was looking back at reviews and I really wanted to read a new review, but we don't have any new reviews, not a single review left in May. So I would love to be able to read a few here in June. That would be great. When y'all leave reviews, it's not just to make my husband and I feel better about doing this podcast, but it also helps get this podcast in front of more people. So people who don't know this podcast exists, which is probably the majority of the world, it helps get the word out and it helps show this podcast up when they are looking at other podcasts. It will suggest it. So please, if you could just take 2 minutes, if you've never left a review before, even if this is your first time ever listening to the podcast or you've been listening since the beginning and you haven't left a review yet, please just take a couple minutes, scroll down on Apple Podcasts and leave a written review. It helps so much. Also, if you want to share your birth story or you know someone who would be a good fit to share their birth story on this podcast, we are still collecting birth stories. I'm trying to fill up our summer schedule and get everything scheduled out. And every week's episode, if you scroll down where it says interested in sharing your birth story, click here. So just click on that form, fill it out real quick. It only takes a minute or two and submit it. And then I will get in touch with you about sharing your birth story on the podcast because that's what this podcast is mainly about, is Christ-centered birth stories, being able to share the love of Christ and the love of birth and just educate women and inspire and encourage women and men in their upcoming births. So we are looking for reviews and we're looking for birth stories. So those are 2 things that I am humbly requesting from you this week. Okay, let's jump in to this week's episode. When you've had 3 medicated births that all went more or less smoothly, why on earth would you decide on an unmedicated birth for your 4th? Today, Kelsie will share with us her 4 birth stories, all which have lessons of their own, but she was amazed to see the difference having an unmedicated birth had in not only her reliance on the Lord, but on her relationship with her husband and how well she felt physically after the birth. Listen in to hear about her experience and the advice and encouragement she has for other expecting moms and dads to be. Well, welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Kelsie with me today. Kelsie, take a minute and introduce yourself. Let us know who you are and just a little bit about yourself so we know who we're talking to.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Kayla. It's such an honor to be on your podcast. I listened to every single episode of your podcast when I was pregnant with my 4th baby, and it really helped me in preparing for her delivery. And so it's just an honor to be able to be on here and share my story in the hopes that it will help another mom down the road. But like you said, my name is Kelsie, and my husband and I have 4 kids. They are 7, 6, 3, and the baby just turned 1 recently. So I have been pregnant or had a baby or toddler for 8 years now, which seems like a long time. I know there are moms out there that have had babies or toddlers for way longer, including you. Um, but yes, we're still in the baby stage. We live in Oklahoma. My husband works in the healthcare world, and I am a stay-at-home mom, which I always used to think before I was a stay-at-home mom that it was easier than what it actually is. My husband, he jokingly calls me the chief housing officer because I just manage everything with the kids and the house and the finances and all of that. So it's a big job and it stretched me, but I love it. And I'm so thankful to get to spend time with all 4 of my kids.
That's wonderful. It is a big
Yeah.
job. It is, I mean, it is a full-time job. Running your household
Yes,
and taking care of your children is nonstop. You don't get days off.
you do not. No. Whether you're nauseous in pregnancy or you're sick for just, caught a cold from the kids or whatever, you do not get any time off. And you still have to get up in the middle of the night and feed the baby or whatever. So it is a full time job, but such a blessing.
Yes. Well, let's start then. Take us back, I guess, 8 years ago then to when you got pregnant with your first. Tell us that story. How did that all go down?
Yes. So my husband and I have been married for several years and just felt like God was calling us to start our family. And we were both very naive to everything baby, everything pregnancy. I don't even think I changed a diaper. I had done some babysitting when I was younger, but it was all older kids. So we were probably like some of the most naive, soon to be new parents out there. Um, I didn't even realize, like, when you took a pregnancy test, if there was a faint line, that still meant positive because that is what happened. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I pregnant? Am I not? Like, I had to Google it, which now, I don't have to do that because I know that means you are pregnant. But we got pregnant pretty quickly. And we're kind of surprised with how quickly we were able to get pregnant. I was working at a software company at the time, and I was also getting my master's in business administration. So I was thinking I'd be able to graduate before the baby was born because I thought it would take a little bit longer. So then, because of how quickly things happened, I had to double up on classes and I could graduate like 2 weeks before he was born. So that's what I did. So it was a lot going on. So I would like leave work, eat food in the car, like a granola bar, go to class, sit in class until 9 p.m. and then drive home. And then I was doing some online classes too. So pretty much every day after work, I was doing class stuff while newly pregnant and just figuring out pregnancy. Praise God, it was a very small but big mercy that that pregnancy was so easy. I was hardly nauseous. I was not doing anything right to ward off nausea. I mean, I was drinking coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning.
Oh,
Now I
you
would
wanted
never.
coffee? Oh.
Yes, I know. I'm like, why did I do that? Because I really didn't have that much nausea on occasion. I remember I had to step out of one work meeting because I was feeling just kind of nauseous, but it was such an easy pregnancy, like, everything was smooth sailing, we found out that he was a boy, we were super excited, and it was just a very easy pregnancy, but spoiler alert, the Lord gave me the easiest pregnancy in the world, but then I had, a very hard postpartum, so I had to, have the challenges on the back end of that.
So, going about being so self-admittedly naive, who did you go to for your care? Like
Yes.
OB, midwife, like what route did you choose?
So, because my husband works in the healthcare world, I didn't even think about it. Honestly, I didn't even really know of other options. I'd never heard of anyone having a home birth. And even if I would had heard of someone doing that, I would not have been interested because my plan was I'm going to go into labor and then I'm going to get an epidural and then I'm going to have my baby.
Right.
That was my plan. I did one hospital birth class, and that was the extent of my prep. And I remember watching, the examples of women in labor, like, in the video and seeing the woman who was having the natural birth, And I thought, who in their right mind would want to do that? Um, so I have definitely come a long way since that point, but that's where I was at that point in time. I loved my OB. I had a great experience with her and all the appointments leading up to labor. But I didn't really know that there was another way at that time, and I didn't take it upon myself to do any research because growing up with what my mom did, with what people I knew did, like that's just what you do. So that was my plan for the first baby.
So then, how far along were you when you went into labor, or did you go into labor?
I did. Surprisingly, for a first baby, I went into labor a few days before my due date. In the middle of the night, my husband and I had been to a pool party the night before, and I slept on my hair wet. And I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, okay, I think I might be in labor, just some cramps. So, like a person who doesn't know anything about labor, I just went ahead and got up and took a shower and washed my hair because I was thinking, if this is the real deal, like my hair cannot look like this, which is so vain in a way, but it really was in bad condition. Um, so I shaved my legs, I was really getting ready. And so my husband woke up about 4 and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I think I'm in labor, and I was too excited to go back to sleep. And so I just labored at home for a while. Once again, was not doing anything right. I think I was just like laying on the couch instead of moving around or doing all the things that you should be doing to help labor progress and relax and all of that. So I remember my OB had told me about the 511 rule, I think it is. So
Mhm.
once I reached that, we were like, okay, let's go to the hospital. Like, we're going to have our baby soon. So we go to the hospital and I get there into triage and they say, okay, you're at a 1. And I was like, "Oh my goodness," because I truly was in a lot of pain. And I thought, "There's no way that this is the pain that comes with being 1 centimeter dilated." Like, I thought I was gonna have a baby, like, soon, and I begged them not to send me home, and they were so nice, and they were like, "Okay, we'll give you, some time, walk the halls, and then we'll check you again." So we did that, and, I just laid on we walked the halls, and then once again, I was just laying in the hospital bed, which is the worst idea. Like, do not lay there. My husband was trying to be very helpful, but he didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to ask for. I was just trying to hang on. So after some time, they checked me and they said, "You're at a 1.5." They said they were so nice. I think it was a slow day. They said, "You are progressing. We can tell, like, you're in a lot of pain. We will admit you." And I was so happy, and I was like, "Please go ahead and order the epidural." We get to our room, I immediately start throwing up, um, and it was just like honestly, that was as painful as it was with my 4th baby, who we'll get to her story, but it was as painful as when I was, like, in transition, is what I remember. I was tensed up, I wasn't relaxing, so I was working against myself, but eventually, I did get the epidural. I was already in labor land. I was probably only, like, 3 centimeters or something, but I remember thinking about the anesthesiologist, like, "I just wanna kiss you." And I told the nurses, I was like, "Whoever invented the epidural, I wanna kiss that person too." It's probably a guy. I wanna kiss him too. I was so loopy. Um, but I was able to relax, of course, after that, and then about midnight that night, I was complete. I started pushing, and he was out within a few pushes. So that was nice that that happened, like, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He did. I guess they didn't break my water, but, he came out like a water slide. I could, like, hear the amniotic fluid, like, splashing on the floor. And the nurse told me the next day, she said, "I had to go home and wash my shoes because they were so soaked." I was like, "Wow, okay, well, that's interesting." Um, but yeah, so once I got there and got the epidural, things moved along really great, and honestly, it was a great experience from that point on, but I did remember thinking, like, I was not prepared, like, even with getting an epidural, I was not prepared for having pain management strategies to get up to that point. But he was healthy, there was not any issues, he was very sleepy, like a lot of newborns are. So breastfeeding was a challenge at first, just keeping him awake. I didn't know what I was doing. The nurses did help. A friend from church came and she helped give me some tips. But I kind of thought this is really hard. But everyone said like it is hard at first, and you just have to power through, and you'll get better at it. Your baby will get better at it. And his weight was fine enough to leave, and I guess I was doing okay enough to leave because they did discharge us after a day or so, so we weren't there for very long.
So when you got home, did it continue to be just as hard?
Yes. So every time I would put him to the breast, he would get so angry and scream and arch his back and push away and kick his legs. And I remember thinking, like, is this what everyone's talking about? Like, is this the hard that everyone is talking about? Like, I guess. My parents were with me. My husband didn't really know how to help other than he was being as supportive as he could. My mom and I, we spent one day, I feel like it was the day my husband went back to work. We got on my computer, we watched like 100 breastfeeding YouTube videos, and we called it our breastfeeding boot camp day. And we just did everything we could because my mom breastfed my sister and I. And so she, knew someone. It'd been a while, of course. Um, so I can't remember if it was like at his 1 week appointment, but my pediatrician fortunately could see that things really weren't going well. And he said, like, you have got to bottle feed him. You can continue to try and nurse, but you need to either pump and give him breast milk that way or formula. But he is losing too much weight and he's getting close to failure to thrive territory. And I was just so taken back. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've been starving my baby possibly. So we immediately made an appointment with a lactation consultant. She was very helpful. She did the weighted feed, but when she did that, she could see that he really wasn't getting anything. He, I think, got like 1 milliliter when he was, a week and a half old, which should be taking way more than that in a feeding. I pumped at that appointment. My output was fine. I think I had like a slow letdown or something, maybe at least with that first baby. But I went and saw her a few more times. She did notice that he had what she thought were tongue and lip ties, like a lot of babies seem to. So she recommended we get him evaluated. We took him to a pediatric dentist, and he did, in fact, have that. So we had his tongue and lip ties lasered. We did all the exercises, which were kind of terrible to do. But unfortunately, it did not help. He still would not breastfeed. He wouldn't latch. He would pop off and still get just super angry. So for a few weeks, I would try breastfeeding and be pumping too, and kind of do the triple feed approach.
Mm,
And after I think my last appointment with the lactation consultant, he still was not getting like anything. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to pump. So at that point, I stopped trying to breastfeed and then just went to exclusive pumping, which this was about, 7 or 8 years ago. They didn't have like the wearable pumps and stuff like they do now, at least, not as readily available. So I just had my Medela pump that I would plug into the wall and sit there and pump, for every 3 hours. So that was hard mentally to do that because I'm an outgoing person. I'm used to working and being with a lot of people. And it was difficult to have the breastfeeding challenges and be kind of chained to the wall, is what I felt like. Um,
yeah. Isolated.
yes, I felt very isolated. My husband had gone back to work, and my parents and my in laws were wonderful and helped, but I mean, they weren't going to come and live with us. Um, So around that time that I decided to exclusively pump and we moved that direction, my son developed colic, which once again, I did not even know what that was. The first night it started happening, because it seems like with colic, it doesn't happen just night one that they're born. It takes a few weeks. My husband and I, we almost went to the ER with him because we were like, something is obviously seriously wrong with him. Nothing will help. He's been screaming his head off for hours, and my wonderful mother-in-law, who lived down the road at the time, came over and helped us, which was such a comfort, just to have her there. And so we all just kind of took turns holding him until it finally subsided. I mean, of course, we tried feeding him, changing his diaper, doing all the things to calm a screaming baby. But that was the first night of weeks and weeks of colic.
Mm.
And around after, I don't know, 4 weeks of that, which we were still in it, I was needing to go back to work. But I was just like not able to function. I mean, I felt like a zombie because my husband had to work. So he was very helpful, but I mean, he wasn't going to stay up all night long with the baby. And so we would kind of take shifts, but I was taking on most of it in the middle of the night and still trying to pump and feeling isolated. And you've got this screaming baby. So I ended up not going back to work. I tried to negotiate a part time type situation, but that company at that time, it was like all full time employees or at headquarters, and there's no part time opportunities. So I just couldn't, take a baby to someone's house or daycare at 7:30 a.m. when I've been up all night with a screaming baby and pumping and put on a business suit and makeup and have intelligent conversations. That was just
Right.
not in the cards for me at that point. So that was a hard transition to give that up, especially on the heels of graduating with a master's in business administration, thinking I was about to take, kind of that next step in my career. But ultimately our children come first and what they need come first. And in that season, I just could not do it all. And so I chose my baby, which was totally the right choice. And I don't regret it at all. But it was a difficult transition.
Yeah. I mean, especially going into the pregnancy thinking, like you said about graduation and him coming like right before you graduated
Yes.
and or right after you graduated. Did you say 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after?
I graduated 2 weeks before.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks before. So I was humongous in my cap and gown walking across the stage like a giant tent. Um, so yeah, so it all ended up working out because God had other plans for our family. We ended up unexpectedly getting pregnant with our second son when that baby was just 7 months old. And a few months later, we found out that we were moving for my husband's job to a different city. So my time at that company would have been short anyways because we would have had to move. But yes, we unexpectedly we were trying to do natural family planning to delay the next pregnancy. We wanted other children, but not yet, especially with everything that we had just been through.
Right.
So we were very shocked. I just word to the wise, if you're using the app, I don't know 100% how correct the data is because yeah, we thought we were in the clear, but we were not. But I'm so glad now because having my two sons close in age is so much fun. I mean, they're like twins in a lot of ways and they complement each other with strengths and weaknesses. So it's so cool to just see how God knew that we needed our next little boy needed them to be close together. Um, our family was very surprised because they had walked through that difficult postpartum with both of us. So I think they thought we would, quote unquote, wait a few years and maybe we would have. But God had other plans. So at this point in time, for that pregnancy, we're in a new city. Once again, planning a hospital birth, but due to the problems and issues postpartum with my first baby, I thought maybe if I had a natural labor and delivery, maybe that would help things. I don't know. I just want to try. I need to be a little bit more knowledgeable this time around. I want to do everything I can to have a better experience for my baby and help set him up for success and myself. I actually found a hospital midwife that I loved. She was phenomenal. And I looked at and listened to the hypnobirthing. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Like the Christian hypnobirthing app?
Okay, not the Christian one. I found just like the general hypnobirthing.
Oh, just like the original hypnobirthing. Yeah.
Yes. And some of it was like a little bit woo-woo for me,
Yeah.
but I wasn't going down that path. What I learned from my first delivery was that I was so tensed up and I needed to find a way to relax despite the contractions.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who had done the hypnobirthing with success and she was like, it really does help you. So I tried to do that. I listened to it during my son's nap time. Half the time I think I would just like fall asleep.
Mhm.
I was
It'll put you to sleep really quickly.
yes. But that was my plan. Podcasts, I feel like were just becoming a thing. And so
Yeah.
I didn't listen to any podcast or read any books. So even though I was like inching towards the natural labor and delivery world, I still did not do as much research as I should have. But that was my plan to do that. I thought second baby, like he'll come very quickly, I bet, at least in comparison to the nearly 24-hour situation with my first. Yes, so I did that. I had my hospital midwife, and leading up to labor, the whole pregnancy had been measuring very large. And I went past my due date, and just at my regular weekly appointment, my midwife said, let's just do an ultrasound just to check on him because he had been measuring large. So we did that. And in that ultrasound, it was showing that he was 11 pounds. And I started crying. I thought, how in the world am I going to push this mammoth baby out? And beyond that, she mentioned, a lot of the things that can come with a larger baby, like shoulder dystocia and some different complications. She did say, ultrasounds are not perfect, especially at this late stage. She
Right.
said it can vary a pound either way. So she
Couple pounds usually.
a couple pounds, yeah. So she was like, it's not likely that he's going to be 11 pounds, but I don't think he's going to be 7 pounds either. So she did say, I would like to schedule you for an induction tomorrow. She said, let's do a cervical sweep to see if we can get things going. And fortunately, that did the trick. So it was not that painful. It's just a little bit uncomfortable. And that evening, we were getting my toddler ready for bed, and I could just feel things, start stirring and cramping and all of that. And so we got our toddler to bed, and I did have more tricks up my sleeve for pain management. So I was in the bath, and it really was very relaxing and peaceful. So at some point we decided it's time to go to the hospital. I had hired a doula as well. I forgot to mention that. So she met us at the hospital, and I think I was about a 5 when I got there, which was good. Like, it was better than a 1.
You're like, yeah, way more progress than last time.
Yes. So I labored at the hospital for several hours, and I did have them check me again. And I think I was at a 6. And I know some people don't like to know what their dilation is, and it can be a mind game, and there is a lot of benefit to that. I'm just the kind of person, like, I have to know.
Mhm.
And
I know a
but
lot of people like you.
okay. But honestly, it did not work out in my favor because we had been there for several hours, and like the contractions there was not like a break. And I just thought, like, I am not doing this all night long. Like, I felt like I was at my limit. And I told my husband and my doula, like, if I ask for an epidural, I don't want y'all like questioning me. Like, I just want to do it, and don't try and like um
Talk you out of it.
talk me out of it. Yeah. I don't really know why I was that way. Maybe I was just scared or something. Um, so I did end up asking for the epidural. I got the epidural. It took several more hours, and the pushing phase went a lot longer this time around, I think because of his size, and apparently he was in there, kind of wonky, to use the medical term.
Yeah.
It took like 2 straight hours, and we were doing all the things, like I was pulling on stuff. My back and shoulders and arms were so sore the next day from all the different things that we were trying. And my midwife was so patient. She was wonderful. And even though I didn't end up having a natural delivery with him, some of the stuff that I had learned, and I had like birthing affirmations in the room and stuff like that. I had scripture. Seeing all of that did help keep me calm during that pushing phase because I was like starting to freak out inside. Like, this is taking a long time, especially with how quickly my first son was born. Having my doula there did help for that. So I am thankful that I did have those tools in my toolkit for his delivery. And then finally, he was born. He wasn't 11 pounds, fortunately, he was 10. So it was off a pound, which I'm very grateful for. But he was perfectly healthy, no issues there. And so it ended up being a great experience, even though I ended up not having him naturally. I didn't really have any regret over that. I didn't feel embarrassed or like, oh man, I gave in. It felt like the right thing to do at the time. And so I'm like, I'm just going with what seems right in the moment. And so everything worked out, and he was a big healthy boy and just a great baby. I'll briefly touch on his postpartum. Fortunately, things have just gone up since my first initial postpartum with my first son. We had a few little breastfeeding challenges at first. I think it was like a blood sugar issue that can be common with bigger babies. So we did supplement with formula a little bit at first. But then he was a great little nurser. I breastfed him for a year and was just so grateful for that kind of redeeming postpartum experience. It really was just a grace from the Lord because I was terrified of having postpartum round two like I did with my first. Especially now I have a toddler to take care of, and they're about 16 months apart. So he did not have colic. He breastfed just fine. He was a decent sleeper. Um, he did not have acid reflux. My first, I didn't mention this, but he had acid reflux and like the projectile spit up
Yeah.
vomiting kind of stuff. So my second did not have any of that. And it was just, it made such a difference with postpartum. And it was a wonderful postpartum. So I was so thankful for that. So it was a great experience.
That's good. That's good to hear that it was redeemed that second time around.
It
I'm
was.
just curious, how big was your first son?
Oh, he was 7 pounds, I think 14 ounces. So just shy of 8 pounds.
Okay. And then your second one was like right at 10 pounds.
Yes.
Nice.
So quite a bit bigger, but I was a big baby as well. So I think it's in the genes. Yes.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So for a while, my husband and I were just totally set with our two boys. Having them close in age was really fun. And COVID happened. That was not for the faint of heart with two very young children, with all the parks closed and all of the things. So for a while, we thought maybe this is just what the Lord has for us. But of course, we continued to pray about it as we felt God stir in our hearts that maybe He had another child for us. So we prayed about it, asked for Him to just show us His plan and His will for our family. And within a few months, I was pregnant again, this time with another baby boy. So we were having all the boys. That pregnancy, I was more nauseous each. Started off with like zero nausea first pregnancy, more second, and then certainly more in the third. And that was difficult, but we make it through. We figure out tips and tricks, and fortunately, it did subside at about 16 weeks. But other than that, I mean, just a textbook pregnancy. It seems like there were no issues. As far as my birth plan went, that hospital midwife had moved to a birth center, and I needed to find someone else because I was still planning on delivering at the same hospital and with our insurance and all of that. It made the most sense. And this time I was going back to square one and was not trying to have a natural labor and delivery. So I just found another OB at that same group and had a great experience with her. She took a lot of time with me and had a great experience. Around this time, two of my best friends were pregnant and had their babies, and they had a scheduled induction. They had great experiences with it, and watching them and learning from them about it, I brought it up to my doctor at the time, and around that time was when the Arrive trial came out as well. And so she
Mhm.
was in favor of that if that's what I wanted to do. And she talked about some of the benefits of a scheduled induction. Um, because too, I had done so much work to try and have my second son naturally. I thought, I'm not doing that again. Now I have two kids. My parents live about 5 hours away. The logistics of them for childcare, I thought, I think it will help me to just know when I'm going to have this baby and have my parents come in. And I'm just going to kind of push the easy button this time around. So that is what I did. So I scheduled my induction. I was 39 and 2, and we went in about 6 a.m. I got the epidural. And within a few hours, I was complete. It took about 45 minutes of pushing, which was longer than what I was thinking because he wasn't as large, but he ended up being sunny side up.
Ah,
So
that'll
that
do it.
that'll do it. And So, but it took about 45 minutes, but it felt like so long in the moment. But he eventually came out with a massive cone head on one side. It was like on one side though. My first thought when I saw him, I thought, what in the world is wrong with him? Because none of my other boys had had any like head
Molding.
shaping issues. And so they assured me that it was normal. Unfortunately, I don't know, within a day, his head was back down, but he did wear his little hat until then. But he was healthy as a horse. He was about 9 pounds. And all in all, from the labor and delivery part, it was great. From the postpartum healing perspective, I don't know if this had to do with the scheduled induction or his position or what, but I had a lot of issues healing postpartum. That birth like wrecked my pelvic floor. And I don't know if it was once again like third baby or position or what, but I had a lot of complications from that and had to do pelvic floor physical therapy and finally did get in a better place, but it was rough going. Like it was painful to walk. At this point I have still two other young little boys and I was like kind of of the mindset, like, I'm just getting back on the horse. I'm gonna go pick them up for Mother's Day out. Like I'm doing all the things like 3 days postpartum.
Ooh.
I know. I'm like, I was a third time mom. Like you would think I would know better. Um, but I was just like ready to feel normal again. And I was not listening to my body.
Mhm.
And that did not help matters. Any damage that was done in delivery was not helped by my walking around doing all the things, lifting my, second son, all of that was not helping anything. But my baby was healthy. Postpartum went well, other than that. This son, he did have some more challenging breastfeeding in the beginning. And once again, I had to do the triple feeding for about a week. But praise God for his just small mercies. When I had to do that, it was Thanksgiving week, and my husband took that entire week off. And so was still a lot, but to have him there to help with other kids, that made that situation a lot better instead
Yeah.
of me trying to triple feed while doing all the things with two little kids and a newborn. So I was still, just the exhaustion that comes with a newborn and triple feeding, but we did get to a great place with breastfeeding. And then I ended up nursing him until he was about 17 months old. So it really
Seems
was
like your nursing journey gets a little bit longer each
a little bit
time.
longer each time. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Um, so we thought that we were done. As done as you can, as you think that you are. But about a year into my postpartum, so my baby was about a year, I just had this overwhelming feeling that you feel like it was the Holy Spirit, like, you are not done. I have another baby for y'all. And I thought, oh no. Because like I just kind of got my pelvic floor in good shape. We have three little boys, which is such a blessing, but it's a lot going on because they were all just very pretty close in age. Um, so I prayed about it, thought about it, didn't mention it to my husband for a while. And finally I brought it up to him and he was not on board. He just listed off all the reasons, which are understandable, for us being set with the three boys that we had. And it felt like we were leaving kind of like normal number of kids into big family world.
Yes. Yes, you
Yes,
are.
yes. I'm like, we would have to get a minivan, which we now have a minivan, and I love it.
And you love it.
And
Yeah.
I love it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back. So but at the same time, because I explained to him, I'm like, I don't feel like this is from me. Because it's my body going through it all. Like, I
Right.
agree, it doesn't make sense in a lot of different ways, but we know that God provides. Like, if He has another child for us, He will provide. Like, we have to be faithful. And my husband is such a strong Christian man. He's such a great spiritual leader for our family. So he wanted to be sensitive to that, of course, and make sure it wasn't just like his flesh being like, no, I want to be able, I can provide for my kids and all of that. So we both prayed about it for several months. And we ultimately decided, we'll do our part to see if God has another baby for us. just for like a month and then we'll reevaluate. I was like, okay, like God doesn't even need a month. Like, of course, He can provide a child at any time. But I said, okay. And that month I got pregnant. So it was so cool to me, just that whole experience in my prayer life and my husband's prayer life and our conversations, just to have this like very strong feeling from the Lord and for that to be confirmed, because sometimes as a believer, I feel like you get in your head, like, is this me? Is this the Holy Spirit? And there are different ways I feel like you can kind of validate that. But I feel like God had our baby girl, it ended up being a girl, in his sight the whole time. And he just needed us to get on board. And so we
Yeah.
did. And my husband is her number one fan now. He is thrilled to death to be a girl dad. And I remind him all the time, I'm like, what would we do without her? What if we had listened to you? So we joke about that now. But so starting with that pregnancy, I was the most nauseous. I was severely nauseated. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I'm one of those people that have like a phobia of throwing up.
Ah,
Yes, I know that as I've listened to birth stories, I've heard people mention that, which is kind of nice to hear that like I'm not the only one.
you're not.
Yes. My mom had HG
Mm.
with my sister and I, and she had a miscarriage between my sister and I. She had it with that pregnancy too. And hearing her talk about how terrible that was when she had to be hospitalized, I thought going into each pregnancy, really like that could definitely happen to me. But there is a genetic component, and that just happens to some moms. So that was each pregnancy was a leap of faith on that front too. Like if that does happen, God will provide. He will be with me. He will give me strength. And even with my fourth pregnancy, on all the nausea, I just remember at night sometimes going to bed thinking, like, how am I going to face tomorrow? Like, I have these three kids. It was the middle of the summer, so it was incredibly hot. We're doing all the kids stuff, like doing the pool, doing the splash pads, everything.
Mm.
And I'm like, I'm doing all the grocery shopping, which is such a trigger. It is such a trigger.
I can't go in a grocery store when I'm nauseous.
Yes,
No
that's
way.
very wise. That's so wise. Um, I to this day cannot look at the like prepared food that's like by the deli meat, where they have
Mhm.
like the weird salads and stuff. I
Mhm.
cannot look at that because it just brought about such horrible feelings within me when I was pregnant. So to this day, I like cannot look at that. Those like weird salads and like Cool Whip salads and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't look. Um, anyways, God gave me strength and energy and perseverance. And something else that I feel like the Lord provides for us is just the wisdom of other mothers. And so hearing what other moms had done to help manage nausea and like learning other people's tips and tricks, having other moms encourage me was just such a gift. It really was. Also, during this point, I started listening to pregnancy and birth podcasts, and that was invaluable. It was so just great to hear that other moms had been through, the nausea and the managing the other kids, and what they did to help manage that was really helpful. The other difference in this pregnancy was that I was going back to trying to have a natural labor and delivery. I felt like, you know what? This is my fourth baby. I think this will probably be our last. Surely this is not going to take very long, as far as the amount of time that, labor can take. Surely it'll be quick. Like I can do anything for a few hours. And I do just want to experience how it feels, even though I know it's painful. I just want to experience that. I've had pretty much every birthing experience other than a C-section. And I just want to see how this feels. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like it's not going to take that long. So it kind of started out as like a personal challenge. But as I got deeper into the birth world, my eyes were really opened to the benefits of natural labor and delivery, like for the mom, for the baby. And it became so much more than just, can I do this? It was, it'll be easier to get the baby out if you're in a different position, potentially than just having to be stuck on your back. I hired a doula, a different doula this time. She was a gift from the Lord. Her name is Cheryl. I think it's called a Mother's Strength Doula Services. She was wonderful, but I remember her coming over to my house and she had the like pelvis skeleton looking thing and
Hmm.
showing how when you're on your back, how the tailbone cannot get out of the way and how that can make it more challenging to push your baby out. But if you're in a different position, like even side lying or hands and knees or standing or squatting, like how that provides a lot more ability for your tailbone to get out of the way and for the baby to get out. So bonding with your baby. There's just so many different things that can be affected by an epidural or what have you. So even though I had done that and had really great experiences, I was so excited to learn about honestly a better way and a way that I just, even though I had tried with my second, I was not as immersed and I did not educate myself as well as I did with my fourth. I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. That I loved it. I mean, it's like a little bit
You mean this book right here?
yes, yes, exactly. I was like reading that book when I was in line to pick up one of my kids from school, and I was on one of the pictures of a baby being born, and I didn't realize one of the guys from the school was like standing there needing to get my like child's number for pickup, and I was like, "Oh, this was like a little bit, graphic." Um, but I learned a ton from that book. I learned a ton from your podcast. I listened to every single episode of your podcast, and it was incredibly helpful.
That makes me so happy, and my
Yes,
husband's so happy too. I mean, we do
yes.
this week in and week out, and sometimes you wonder if anyone's listening or if anyone's getting any benefit out of it, and so that just makes me really happy. Thank you for saying
Oh,
that.
oh my gosh, yes, I'm so thankful for you and your husband, and I left you a review one time, and you read it. You were like, "Okay, this is Kelsie from Oklahoma. She said this, and this." I was like, "Oh my gosh, you read my
Oh,
review."
yay.
So even though I'm kind of a private person online, I just really wanted to do this to hopefully help other moms, especially moms who are comfortable with, medical hospital births. I know a lot of the people on your podcast are more into home births or birth centers, but like you can still have a natural hospital birth.
Yeah.
And two, I just wish even in the OB world, I wish that they would encourage mothers to look into natural birthing, even if it's at the hospital, instead of just, oh yeah, like you're gonna get an epidural. And I think some of that's on the mom too. It's not just on the provider.
Yeah.
But I just wish that that would be the standard. And of course, there's a place for C-sections and epidurals and all of that. Like that can be very beneficial as well in certain instances. But I wish that just natural birth was the norm
Yeah.
because as we're going to get into, it just rocked my world. And I'm such a believer now.
Now that you've done it, well, let's get into it then.
Okay.
So you were thoroughly prepared this time.
I was thoroughly prepared. We had a great team in place. I just had a kind of standard OB. She was very supportive of my natural birth plans. She was very supportive of me delivering on, hands and knees or what have you. She was not like you have to lay on your back. So she was wonderful. Her only advice to me, she was like, just really, do your homework. You want to come into it prepared. Don't just try and wing it, which I appreciated. There's so much truth to that. So, once again, this baby was measuring very large, and she was getting a little bit nervous about that as we got closer to my due date. Because I was more in the natural birth world at this point, I wasn't that concerned because my husband and I seem to have bigger babies. And it seems like most of the time your body only makes a baby as big as it can deliver. Not every single time, of course, but I wasn't as concerned, but she highly suggested at the 39-week, or excuse me, at the 40-week mark, if she wasn't here yet, that we do an induction. I really did not want to do that. I know you can turn that down, but I really did not want to go down that path because I really wanted to labor at home. I thought that was going to be my best chance for a natural delivery in the hospital. So my goal was just to show up at the hospital at like an 8 or a 9 and just push the
Push out
baby
a
out.
baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then be done with it. I did not want to spend a whole lot of time there. So when she started mentioning that, I was like, yeah, we'll just see. She brought up doing a cervical sweep. I was great with that because I mean, I know it's kind of like an intervention, but still, in my mind at least, it's like kind of natural. So she did that leading up to the 40-week appointment. And my body just like felt ready. Like I just kind of had this feeling. So right after that, like nothing happened. I went and ran errands. I went to Costco, loaded up on food. I just feel like I had this, intuition that things, probably because of the cervical sleep, but my body just kind of felt ready. Um, Loaded up on food. My parents were coming in to take care of our kids. My in-laws were on standby to help with anything. And that evening, my husband and I took our kids out to eat for like one last hoorah before the baby was born, whenever she was going to be born. And while we were eating, I started feeling kind of that crampy feeling, but nothing consistent. And then we were getting our kids ready for bed. And then I could really kind of feel the contractions start. It wasn't super painful, just noticeable. And like everything I'd learned, it's like you just keep on doing your life. Like don't stop everything and have a big freak out over it. It's just like keep on until you can't anymore. So just continuing to bathe kids, brush teeth, all of the nighttime, bedtime stuff. And we got the kids down and I told my husband, like, I think I might be in labor. And so he was really excited. I got on the birth ball and just did like hip rotations. I did listen to the Christian hypnobirthing. It's funny, I put that in like on my earpods and listened to that the entire time. But at some point my earpods died. And by that point I was in labor land. I didn't even notice. But that really did help me at first. Just listening to scripture was just very comforting. So we text our doula, and from the onset of, putting the kids down and going downstairs, the contractions were already like 2 or 3 minutes apart. So there was really not that slow of a ramp up. And then if I walked, they were just like on top of each other. Like I had to have my husband like getting our stuff because I would just be like, I would take 2 or 3 steps and a contraction would hit and I would get up. I mean, they were just right on top of each other. So my doula was on standby. We were timing the contractions on an app. And within an hour, I mean, they were about a minute apart, excuse me, a minute long and 2 to 3 minutes apart. And I told my husband, I was like, I think I want to get in the bath. I'm like, I don't think I can walk to the car. Like, it's not that far away. Like, I don't think I can walk. He was like, Kelsie, if you cannot walk to the car, that means we need to go like now because things are not going to get any easier. And we were really not aiming for a wild birth. We were not at that level in our natural birth journey. Um, and so I was able to walk to the car. I had like 4 contractions in the like short distance to the car. We drove to the hospital. I get out, my husband parks the car. I'm just like in the middle of the hospital, like having these contractions. And my husband had started with the hip squeezes. Have you ever had your husband do the hip squeezes?
Yeah, I usually prefer the counter pressure on the back, but I have
Okay.
had both at the same time, like hip squeezes and counter pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, once you
That was
start it, you
amazing.
can't stop it.
You cannot. And so my husband had started doing hip squeezes before we left the house, and now he was not there when he was parking the car, which felt like an hour. And each contraction, they asked, like, do you want us to wheel you? I said, no, I need to be moving. But each contraction, I would whip out my combs that were in my pocket and squeeze my combs, and my husband would squeeze my hips leading up to us going to triage. So I get to triage. I was at an 8, which I was so floored about. I thought, okay, I'm going to be having this baby like any minute because like all the birth podcasts I had listened to, not all of them, but a lot of them, especially with subsequent pregnancies, I feel like when you get to an 8, like it seemed to happen pretty fast.
Yeah, you're almost there
But
typically.
you're almost there typically. Well, things slowed down, not contraction wise, because they were still on top of each other, but I kind of like stalled progression wise. I don't know if it was the change of scenery or her position. She was still pretty high up apparently, but we still just, did the hip squeezes. I was kind of kneeling over the hospital bed. My doula got there. I was so happy when she got there. It just felt like a warm blanket on me or something to have her presence. She had a bunch of tricks up her sleeve. She brought labor aid with her, which was like her little concoction of some kind of honey drink that she would give me in between contractions, which was very helpful. My husband would squeeze my hips. One time he wasn't there, and my doula tried to do it, and she was kind of a petite lady, and she just did not have the strength of my husband. I told her, I was like, Cheryl, I love you, but you're not allowed my hip squeezes anymore. Um, and so she was so helpful in so many ways. But eventually, when things just were kind of taking a long time, she told me, she said, there are positions for comfort and there are positions for progress. And she said, we need to get you in a position that's going to help you progress. So we tried the peanut ball, we tried a bunch of different things, but I needed to move. I know that's kind of common. Just that movement was really helpful. So eventually I was kind of like backwards facing on the hospital bed. My husband was there. I remember at one point, I felt like this was taking forever. Like I thought I was about to have my baby, and we're like several hours in. It was going so fast. And the contractions were, it felt like one on top of the other, like hours of no break. And my husband kind of makes me tear up thinking about it, but he prayed over me, and um, he was just such a great support in that whole experience. But in the book of Nehemiah, there's a part where Nehemiah prays, God strengthen my hands. And he just, that's like stuck in my mind. Just him praying over me and saying, God, strengthen Kelsey's hands. And he had just done this Bible study about Nehemiah. And so I know he like loves that book. So I know how impactful that has been on his life. And so for him to just pray over me to like strengthen her hands, because at that point I was like, I wasn't asking for an epidural, and I was in it for the long haul, but I was just, at that point that we all get to, like, I can't do this anymore. And that labor was just such a great bonding experience with my husband that I had not experienced with our other children. So that was just really cool. But shortly thereafter, when the nurse was checking me, my water broke, and it broke like all over her hand. I thought I had peed on her. Because I've never had that sensation before. I told her, I said, I am so sorry. I just peed on you. And she was like, no, you didn't. It was your water. I thought, oh, thank goodness. But then I also thought, like, oh no, now things are going to get even worse. Um, they did not. I don't know how, like, somehow even got like a little bit better.
Huh.
I don't know how that was even possible. But that was very much towards the end when my husband prayed for me, and then it's like my water broke right after, and then I was complete. And so praise God, maybe I just needed that prayer. But then I was complete, and they said, okay, now you can start pushing. I did not have the fetal ejection reflex up until that point, but it was like once I just gave a small push, my body just totally took over. And I, of course, had never felt that before. And it just felt like the train had left the station. My husband was like holding onto my arms to give me leverage. And I was kind of like kneeling on the bed, sort of like kind of hands and knees, but on the back of the hospital bed. And I was making all the crazy noises. Within a few pushes, she was out, and she just shot right out. Because I was kind of on the up a little bit, my doctor was below me. When she came out, amniotic fluid like shot all over her face.
Oh.
I I would say I felt terrible, but that's just like one of those things you can't control. But my doula was taking pictures, and there's like pictures of my doctor. It's like on her glasses. I'm sure it was like in her mouth. Like it was a lot. But she just came right out. I did not feel the ring of fire, which I was a little bit nervous about that, but I didn't feel the ring of fire, and I didn't tear, which that was
Nice.
a blessing.
Is that your first time not tearing?
Yes. And it makes, I think the combination of not tearing, having an unmedicated delivery, I felt so amazing afterwards, like in the days and weeks afterwards too. But anyway, so the doctor like handed me my baby girl. My husband is crying. It took me a second. I feel like my first thing was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just did that. I just kept on repeating it, and of course, was so happy to see her and lay my eyes on her sweet face for the first time. But I just kept on saying over and over, I can't believe I just did that. I can't believe I just did that. As you know, what an intense experience it is. So they put her on my chest. We started breastfeeding, and that went well. And yeah, I was up and walking around shortly thereafter, and moved us to our room. And the breastfeeding was great with her, other than she was pretty sleepy. I thought maybe since I didn't have the epidural, it would help my baby be more awake and alert. but she was just as sleepy as my boys, you know, where you're just like getting the diaper wipe on her feet and trying to keep her awake. And eventually she did wake up some, but you know, in those first days or early weeks, it is kind of hard sometimes to keep them awake for like a full feeding. But she was a great little nurser. I never even had to see a lactation consultant with her. And she gained weight great and ended up being like the chunkiest, fattest little baby, which is so cute.
And how much did she end up
Yes.
weighing?
Okay, so she ended up weighing 8 pounds, 4 ounces. So not
Oh, so
a
not as big
huge
as your other boys, except the first
no.
one.
And so, yeah, so I feel like the concerns about her size were a little bit off, so to speak. But I mean, my OB said too, like, you know, of course, it's not a perfect technology of
Right.
knowing the size, but I mean, she was a great size, and I obviously had no problems getting her to
Out.
come out. Yes. So, yeah, so she was a great healthy size. Postpartum, it was my best postpartum. I wisened up on asking for help, and so I told my husband, like, "I need you to take off a full week because in the past, you know, he wasn't able to do that, but I'm like, "Do what you have to do. I need you to take off a full week." And then I asked my parents to come for a full week also, so that way I could have, like, 2 full weeks of help. So we did that, and then, that first week that my baby was born, my husband actually found out that he got a new job. And so he ended up having several weeks between ending his former job and starting his new job. And so he was able to be home with us like after that initial 2 week period, which
Wow.
was so impactful for postpartum. We had great family bonding. You know, he took the older boys a lot, and I just had the baby. It just made a huge difference postpartum. But then he did move before we found a house. So, for several weeks, I was kind of on my own. He came
Oh, it was
back.
like new job, you had to move again.
Yes, and because we were so set up with our house, with it being baby proofed, and you know, we had friends and community and school and all of that. Our plan was I'm not going to move with the kids until we have a house to move into, instead of being in some kind of you know apartment or temporary housing. So praise God, we found a great house and were able to move within a few weeks of him starting his job, but it still was several weeks of like lonely nights, dealing with, you know, the newborn struggles. Like she didn't have colic, but I would say she had a touch of it or just the nighttime fussies that would
She may have
start.
had a witching hour. Have you heard of
She
the
had a
witching
witching,
hour?
that was about 9 p.m. until midnight or so,
Yep. Yeah.
where nothing would help.
Mhm.
She also was not happy in her bassinet. Like, my boys, for the most part, I could just swaddle them, put them in their bassinet, and they would wake up however often, but, like, they would settle down and be happy in their bassinet. Not so with her. She would be so angry when we put her in there, and so I feel like too, moving into a little bit more of the natural world and just being a fourth-time mom, like, you know what? We may have to break just a few rules here because I'm naturally a little bit more of a rule follower. But we did like I just had to like hold her a bunch more like while I was sleeping. We, you know, did everything as safely as possible. But she still would never sleep in her bassinet. And eventually I put her in there like on her stomach, and that did help. But that was kind of a crazy time period of like looking for a house, the sleep struggles with the newborn, my husband starting his new job, but God was with us every step of the way. And in all of that, and like the good and the hard, I just feel like you can see God in just his faithfulness, his mercy, redeeming hard situations, and being by our side, even if things aren't working out the way you want them to. And I mean, that's how it goes with pregnancy and delivery and newborns. It's like, you don't get to send God your wish list and everything happens the way you want it to, you know, but he always will be with us and never leaves us or forsakes us, even if things aren't working out the way that we want them to.
Amen. Well, since you just shared all of that, is there anything else you want to say, any advice you want to give to any parents out there?
I would say do your research on natural labor and delivery, pain management techniques, even if you're not thinking you're going to go down that path with your baby. And I think most of your listeners probably are because this is, for the most part, a natural birth podcast. But I think that a lot of women, myself included, were just very ignorant about the benefits of natural labor and delivery. And even if you do think you want an epidural, you still are going to have a chunk of time that you need to manage labor and manage contractions. And I kind of thought that like early labor wouldn't be that painful. And maybe for some people it's not, but I wish I had some tricks up my sleeve and had better coping strategies. And so, yes, I think just do your homework in that realm. And even with the first baby, I think just try, do your research, have your birth team in place, but try to have a natural labor and delivery. I feel like it's your reliance on the Lord, at least in my life, was greater with that baby
Mhm.
because I didn't feel like I could rely on, medical pain relief. I had
Yeah.
to rely on the Lord. I had to rely on my husband. And I feel like that is just such a huge difference in different kinds of birth.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right now, we're not planning on having any more unless the Lord changes our mind. But if I did, I would definitely go down the natural birth path again. And something I'm sure you've seen too, it's so interesting to me. Moms that end up having natural labor and delivery, most of the time, that is what they continue to do. Like, I don't know if I've ever met anyone that has done that and like hated it and said, I will never do that again. Like, I'm for sure, getting an epidural. I've never met
They only
anyone.
say that in the moment, and then when they get pregnant
Yes,
again, they end up having a natural labor
that
again.
is true. When they have time to reflect on it, yes, in the moment they might be questioning their decision making, but yes, after the fact. And I am definitely that way too. I'm like, I would never do it another way.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.
Okay, I did type out like some bullet points, which was really fun to like go back and think through everything.
It's like, yes, you're sharing your story, for the benefit of other people so they can hear and, be inspired and learn and
Hmm.
grow in their faith and their knowledge. But the number of people who come back and tell me it was actually really healing for them, like
Hmm.
to be able to tell all the stories like back to back and like kind of reprocess the whole thing. Um, that's been really encouraging.